Good evening, everyone, and welcome to this evening's meeting of the Boston Area Town Committee. And my name is Councillor Barry Pierpoint, and I'm the chairman of this committee. And Councillor Patsy Marson is my vice chair, and she is on to my right. Moving on to housekeeping rules as follows. Restroom facilities available for ladies on this floor and halfway down the main stairwell for the gentlemen. In the event of a fire alarm sounding, officers will escort everybody out of the building to the nearest fire safety point in the car park. Would all persons addressing this meeting please do so through the microphone system at all times? This meeting is being recorded. Please be advised that abuse or intimidation of any kind will not be tolerated. Anyone who is deemed to breach this requirement will be warned and asked to refrain. If their behaviour persists, they will be asked to leave the meeting. We'll now move to into the part one of this evening's meeting, and we will firstly address the preliminary items. To receive apologies for absence.
Thank you, Chairman. We have apologies from councillors Anton Danny and Lena Savicchia. Thank you.
Thank you, Karen. To sign the minutes of the previous meeting held on the 6th of June, do I have members' permission to sign the meeting minutes, please?
Yeah.
Thank you. Minutes signed. Update on actions from the minutes of the last meeting. I'll ask Mr. Perry to update us, please.
Thank you, Chairman. The Green Flag Working Group met on the 26th of June, where it agreed the outline and scope of the project, and work is now starting to explore the resources required to develop a Green Flag, towards a Green Flag award. The work programme will involve the management plan itself, exploring an option for a UK SPF funding for a Friends of Central Park in support of developing strategy and the development of appropriate policy. The next step will be getting a visit organised to the City of Lincoln, where they have recently successfully achieved 4 Green Flag awards. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you, Phil. Right, we go on to receive any declarations of interest from members. Do we have any declarations of interest from anyone? No? Right, public questions. Do we have any public questions?
None submitted, Chairman. Thank you.
Does anyone attending in the public area wish to address this meeting? Sir, you'd like to come to the table and have a seat, and I think your microphone might be switched on, or is it not switched on? Should be switched on. If you can give us your name and then tell us a little bit about what you want to speak about, okay?
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. My name's Jonathan Wolfe. I'm one of the occupants of Carlton Road. I have spoken to you before with regards to the littering, and I think Councillor Dorian, we've spoken by emails. I was very disappointed to hear that the Lincolnshire County Council wouldn't put up a camera to survey the appalling area at the bottom of Granville Street, which is right next to my house, which is a constant tip of garbage. I have asked what's going to be done about it. You did say you're going to have a camera there. That's no longer going to happen. I'm going to ask, is there any plans for anything to replace the possibility of a camera? The second thing is that when I did hear about the camera, I sent a semi-joking email back to the gentleman who sent me the email. I'm sorry, I can't remember his name, saying that I'm quite happy for the council to put the camera up on my house, and that you can actually put the camera pointing down at the area and you can record it to your heart's content. You can even use my broadband, and I have no problems with that at all. Won't charge you anything. The only thing that I would ask is that you might have to cut down 1 or 2 of the trees to get access to it. That was a semi-joke, but it isn't. I am quite happy, and my husband is quite happy to do that. You can use our electricity, you can use our broadband, but we've got a camera there you can use. I want something done about that area there. We have rats, we have seagulls pulling apart the garbage, the rubbish, the I wouldn't want to say the ladies' bits and pieces that are being thrown away there, the food, the bones, the meat, the nappies. It is disgusting. And I have thanked the guys who come along there to clear it all up. I'm almost on a name basis with them these days. They have a horrible task to do it. I have thanked them time and time again. You must be spending an absolute fortune on paying these people to go around. There must be a better way. And I know last time I asked, you said that you are prosecuting the people when you find them. Are you finding them? I haven't seen anybody being found. I haven't heard of anybody being prosecuted. We are still getting people to, dumping stuff. I think I might know one person who's doing it, but I've got no proof. I want to know what what Boston Town Council are doing about it. And I'm sure a lot of Boston people want to know what you're doing about it. We had those very interesting and very useful packs sent out in different languages. One thing that we did hear from one or two of the people in our area was that in houses of multiple occupancy, when they are just having 1 or 2 people per room, they don't have bins for themselves. That is why they are dumping rubbish. Now, no, it's not your fault, it's the landlords. But something's got to be done about that. Have a word with the landlord so they can actually provide the bins for their tenants. That might be one of the reasons why. But we need to find something, because I know I'm only a visitor, well, I'm new to Boston, but I love this town and it's a beautiful town. I want to see it become another beautiful town again. And it's got so much potential. I actually come from the south coast, as you might tell by my voice. I used to live down in Brighton, and I don't know if you've ever been to Brighton, any of you, but there are places down there called the North Lanes and the South Lanes, and they are back streets which have little artisan shops and little shops around there. Boston has the possibility of being something like that. They've got some lovely little areas, some lovely little shops that you can promote. The new generation that's coming around could be wonderful. But you've got this pall of this rubbish hanging over us.
Mr. Wolf, I'm sorry to interrupt you, but I think I've got the message.
Yeah.
And I think we've all got the message around this table.
Okay.
And the officers have recorded what you've said.
Fine.
And what I'm going to do now is say that we're going to now look into this for you and come back to you with some solutions. I'm not saying we're going to do all the solutions in one go,
no.
because you're asking a multitude of things here. We've got portfolio holders, we've got officers here, and then between us all, we're not taking any questions. We can't do questions today. There's not a question session, but we are going to look into all this and we're going to come back to you.
Yeah.
Sorry, Councillor Dorian, I'm not taking any questions today. We don't do questions at BTAC.
I was just winding up for that, but I'll say
we will get back to you.
Thank
you.
We
will look into the matter, and somebody will come back to you and speak to you. If Councillor Dorian wants to talk to you after the meeting, it's up to Councillor Dorian. Okay.
Thank you very much.
Thank you,
Chairman.
We're going to move on. Thank you. Right, that concludes the preliminary items on that agenda. Let's move into part 2 of this evening's agenda. Our first item on the business this evening is the BTAC Small Grant Scheme, which is on page 5. This is tabled purely for committee to note the recommendations of the Small Grants Committee. Some of us around this table obviously are on that committee, and all I'm looking for now is a recommendation that BTAC receive the decision of the members' working group. Are we all happy with that? Thank you. Noted it is. Right, item 2. In a change to the scheduled agenda, the next item will now be the report requested from the last meeting identifying the reason for the variance against budget on the public conveniences. I've changed the agenda around, ladies and gentlemen. I hope you don't mind, but we're now going on to that one. This is on page 21 of the report, and the Portfolio holder, Councillor Dale Broughton, is in attendance to provide a summary of the report, supported by the report author, our Services Manager, Duncan Collingsworth. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair, and good evening, fellow councillors. On the 13th of February 2024, the property team were informed by Bond Colleges from the Council's finance team that the water bill for Bond Street toilets for the period of 10th of November 2023 to the 9th of February 2024 had come in at £4,201, circa 10 times more than a normal quarter. Officers commenced daily meter readings only to find virtually identical use to all previous consumption periods, save for the November-February period. Having monitored water consumption since February, consumption remained static at pre-November 2023 levels. During the period, there was absolutely no evidence of any valve failure on any cistern, tap or other water appliance, and Anglian Water remained insistent that the water meter at the location could not possibly have gone to fault. The volume alleged to have been used and the resulting bill remained totally unexplained. In respect to Central Park, property colleagues were alerted to a notable increase in supply costs in September 2023. The water supply at this location feeds several locations throughout Central Park, in addition to the toilet block, including the aviary and a mess room used by council staff. Careful checks and monitoring of the area upon notification failed to detect any obvious areas where a leak was taking place. Between September and October 2023, both property staff and the council's maintenance contractor undertook visual and physical investigations but did not identify any escape of water. In November 2023, officers commissioned Wave Utilities, a specialist leak detection team, to trace the entire water system in the park. After extensive testing, they identified a leak in the supply pipe that carried water underneath the aviary to the staff mess room. Given the cost of excavating the entire length of pipe buried in the aviary floor, the supply was disconnected, with a new surface supply being installed within the aviary. These works were undertaken at a cost of £5,970. The leak detection team carried out further testing post-works completion and have been able to determine that all leaks at the location have been resolved. The total cost for water consumption at this location for 23-24 was £40,421. As a result of the recommended works being undertaken, water consumption for April to June 2024 was significantly reduced to 2,382. Extrapolated, that would give an annual estimated consumption of £9,531 going forwards. Given that a leak was found, officers are engaging Anglian Water to seek a refund of charges paid on the basis that the attendant sewerage charges within the bills paid are directly related to the total water drawn. As the water leaked into the ground and could not have been discharged as sewerage or otherwise into the foul drainage system, it is a line that should definitely be pursued. I ask that committee note the identification of the reasons and costs for the overspend. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Broughton. Are there any questions? I'll start the ball rolling with the first question. I can't accept and I can't understand why nobody can find a deficit, whether it be a leak or a meter reading, for us to pay an extra £4,000 out somewhere and just pay it because we can't find an explanation to that. I can't accept that. There's got to be a reason. There's got to be something behind all that. You just don't have a bill that's £4,000 more from nowhere. There's got to be a reason. So I know, Duncan, you're here tonight as well to support Councillor Broughton. Can you put any thought on that at all, or have you got any explanation? I know you're quite new to the post as well, so I'll wait over to you.
Yeah, it's from experience. The commercial arm of Anglian Water are really quite bullish and difficult, less customer focused than they are for domestic services. What I will undertake to do is to try and open a further discourse with them post my colleague Nigel Hall, who's left the authority, to see if there's an opportunity for a negotiation. When Nigel approached them, it was quite simply, I'm right, you're wrong. But having talked the matter through with yourself and Councillor, But as I will see if there's a way that we can open a discourse to at least discuss that matter further.
Thank you very much, because I always say there's a reason behind everything, and there's got to be a reason for a £4,000 bill coming out of nowhere. Unless, of course, somebody's taking money, water out of our system and, you know, siphoning it off somewhere. I've no idea. But anyway, you're going to do that. That's very kind of you. I do appreciate it. Question from Councillor Gilbert.
I mean, I'm presuming Bond Street is what I would call Leicester Square car park. Is that correct? Yeah. And so I just wonder, we've had a recently installed disabled toilet in the last couple of years installed in that car park. I wonder whether or not this seepage or leakage is in any way linked to that installation, or does that have its own meter?
No, officers were able to take a series of meter readings that included that spur that goes off there. There was no seepage or leakage that officers can find on that system at all. It is simply a significant anomaly for which there is no explanation currently, I'm afraid.
Any further questions on the Bond Street one first before we... Councillor Austin.
Thank you, Chairman. Not being stupid, am I? But we're talking about Bond Street and we're talking about Central Park. Have there been issues with both of them? Surely they're not metered together, are they? It seems very strange, that's all.
Is the two separate entities, two separate billing systems, and two slightly different problems, because we have clearly got an established leak at the Central Park, which we've dealt with. We've clearly got an anomaly with no demonstrated leak at Bond Street, so we're dealing with them in two individual locations with two separate problems.
Councillor Dorian.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. The new chief executive of Anglian Water recently wrote to me, and I copied it to all councillors, Chair. He's recently just started that role and clearly wanted to make an impression. So I'd be more than happy to write to him as leader of the council and advocate and lobby that he takes a personal interest in this. So I'll liaise with Duncan and get a letter sorted. It can't do any harm.
That would be appreciated, and I think you know, we are a customer of theirs, and I think just to pay a bill because somebody says we're bigger than you is not acceptable. And I think, you know, I'm one for always standing our corner. And thank you very much for that offer, Councillor Dorian. And if you can do that, please, we'd appreciate it. Councillor Woodliff.
Thank you, Chairman. I suppose my question is, how often do we take meter readings? That's the thing is, because you take meter readings, it's on a monthly basis. You're going to work out very quickly whether there's a fault. But if you wait 3 or 4 months and then you see a sizable, whopping great bill coming along the line, you know, that rather begs the question as to whether we're doing it enough. So I would suggest that meter readings for water are taken on a very regular basis, certainly every month. And then at least we can pick up whether or not there's something's going wrong. Because I mean, I don't know how many swimming pools of water you must have dished out, you know, for a bill 10 times bigger than what it was. A lot amount of water, isn't it? There's a shortage of it apparently, so I'm told regularly. We must do our bit, mustn't we? Make sure we monitor the supply of water and the bill particularly.
Thank you, Councillor Woodliff. Do you know how often we take the meter readings of these premises?
I believe the meter readings are submitted quarterly, so every 3 months. If there is a problem, clearly we pay it more attention. Being brutally honest, Chair, it's a matter of resource. That we have a significant number of places where water meters are installed. There is one gentleman in property services at the moment with a technical assistant. The ability to provide that level of service is limited, I'm afraid, being honest. We will do our best. Colleagues in the finance team alert us to any discrepancies as soon as they become aware of them. But to go to that level of proactive delivery of service, I'm afraid, is not possible with current resource.
I understand your response. I understand the concern of Councillor Woodliff. What my worry is, I don't want to see another £4,000 bill popping up in 6 months or 9 months or 12 months time down the line because there's another anomaly. So do we take our own meter readings, or do the Water Authority take the meter readings for us?
Understanding is that the Water Authority take those meter readings for us. They then go onto a portal and bills are submitted from there. It is possible, Chair, that the wave systems now offer a fully automatic meter reading facility that I'm looking at for colleagues in East Lindsey at the moment. That comes in at £1,000 per metre per year for them to take responsibility. So they look at water pressure and water consumption and compare that dynamically. Because that's the way of the world going forward. These things are all automated rather than manual readings, but I don't have any budget to support that type of facility at the moment. Thank you.
Okay, perhaps that's something you might want to consider putting into a budget or asking somebody to give you some help with. Councillor Gleeson.
Thank you, Chair. Two separate things, really. One, what are the taps like in the non-Central Park one? Are they ones that can be left on, or are they the ones that you push down and they stop after 10 seconds?
To be honest, Councillor, through the chair, I don't know.
I mean, my suspicion is that somebody has left the taps on and have gone in some sort of, is very possible, some evil, what's it? If they're ones that can be left on, and therefore it might be an idea, if they are the ones that can be left on, we have the ones you push down and they go off after a bit. So that's just...
I'll ask Duncan to check into that for you, Councillor Gleeson, because there's a good point there that if we have got taps that just stick down and keep going forever and a day, then wouldn't have we got a bill of £4,000?
Yeah.
So can you investigate that, have a look and report back to us, please? Because clearly we need to do something about the problem if it's a stick down tap.
I think I can rule that one out from the actions that were taken prior to me becoming involved. So the street scene team and the toilet cleaners check those facilities a number of times each day. So that didn't happen. They're what called Prestex taps, is that you press them down, they're set for a determined period. That's right. They present a much less risk of Legionella. So I think the answer to that is it's not that that's caused this.
It was because it seems that something obviously happened in that 3-month period where a whole load of water went somewhere.
Your second part of your question, Councillor.
Well, I mean, and I understand this is commercial water supply by Anglian Water, but I mean, we have an electronic water meter thing. I mean, because they're forever sending me emails telling me I've got a leak, and then they send me emails telling me I've no longer got a leak, and I've done not a lot about it. And surely they must, don't Anglian Water offer smart meters or not?
That's exactly what I alluded to earlier.
Oh, that was the way.
That's £1,000 a year if we want to subscribe to their service. Unfortunately, they are much more individual customer focused rather than their commercial arm. And their commercial arm is exactly what it says it is.
Fair enough.
Okay. Any more questions on the Bond Street leak, right? The leakage of the water. Let's go on to the other one then, the car park one. Sorry, the Central Park one. Any questions on that one? That looks like we're actually fighting for the refund on that. And I did say to you, let's make sure we get our £500 back as well for the money we spent on organising their commercial arm to come and do it for us. Are any questions on that one, on that problem? Councillor Gilbert.
In the sense that, can we guarantee we won't have a similar situation occurring again? I don't know whether or not we need a regular check of the water system, but it could prove to be quite useful given what we've been discussing up to now.
I absolutely can't, unfortunately, guarantee that the same circumstance won't appear again. Is if we could get ourselves into a really proactive stance with replacement and regular monitoring, is that costs a significant amount of money. The infrastructure that Boston has in place is old, and old infrastructure, unfortunately, allows for these things to happen, especially with water systems. Some of Boston's water systems are steel pipes, some of them are black arc thin, and very few of them are actually the new plastic pipes that everybody recognises. Quite simply, when you patch old water systems, all that happens is the water pressure finds the next weakest place. So I can't, unfortunately, make the promise that you would like me to.
That was the question I mentioned to Duncan in the chairman's briefing earlier on about the fact that if the pipes are old, and I can see another problem in the foreseeable future where some more pipes are going to go broken and we're going to get more holes and more leakages. Councillor Izard.
Thank you, Chair. When we have events in the park, can they tap into any kind of water tap usage at all?
Chair, to be fair, I don't really know. I'm not as familiar with officers who've worked here 30 or 40 years for those infrastructure things. I'm still very much the new boy on the block and finding my way in. As I'm sure that we can find out and make a direct response to yourself. But that particular service into the park, as it said, serves 5 different locations. But I'm not familiar whether there's a wider water resource available in the park for other events.
Thank you, Duncan. If you could come back to the next meeting and just update us on that, I'd appreciate it, so that everybody around the table knows exactly where we stand. Is that okay? Written response is fine. Thank you. Councillor Dorian.
Just to help, Chair, there is an outside tap in the park near the welfare hut for the chaps and girls that used to work there. I've certainly used it in the past, so it's been made available to users of the park.
Is that means that anybody can just take water if they feel like? Is that what you say?
No, Chair. No, it's behind a locked gate. I used it when my dog rolled in something. And I didn't want to put her in my car. That was years ago, probably about 20 years ago. So yeah, it's an outside tap, but it's behind a locked gate, so it'd be certainly available for events.
I thought you were going to tell us.
I
thought you were going to tell us you're taking a bath or something out there.
Yeah. I'm not sure what you're thinking of, Councillor Izard, but they would need a long extension hose if they did want to use it. But it's
Yeah, I was just considering if we start holding events in the park, or I know the funfair, whether they were drawing water from that tap. That was my only concern, whether that took the...
I think we have to think of everything, because at the moment, nobody seems to have the handle on anything, because Duncan's new and the previous guy's not here. And we're talking about problems with water in 2 areas. And, you know, we have to explore every opportunity in every situation. Councillor Gleeson first, followed by Councillor Gilbert.
Just a quick one. So the leak was underneath the aviary. So were we able at least to have ducks?
Do I need to say any more? Thank you. Councillor Gilbert.
Okay, so the point that's just been made by Councillor Dorian reminds me that there is actually a tap at the monument in the marketplace. I just wonder that doesn't appear to have a meter attached to it. I just wonder whether or not that is metered elsewhere.
I'll ask Duncan to investigate that for us, or do you have the answer? Could that be another one of those questions for an answer to come back to us?
Ingram Memorial, it's on the sort of the marketplace side of the wall that surrounds the Ingram Memorial. It's just by the entrance as you go in towards the memorial itself.
Right, so can I ask you to look at that for me? Councillor Woodliff.
Thank you, Chairman. If there's a prospect of this thing going again in the future, then we have to look, I think, at the entire pipe supply. I mean, I think, as I understand it, they didn't try to repair the one at the Avery. They put a new line in with a polypipe, I suppose, whatever it is they use these days. Maybe the answer is therefore to offset future, leaks, whatever, when you're joining old to new, is to rip out or replace the old with a new pipe. And maybe that's their long-term view over a period of years, which we need to do to replace the entire system to ensure that it will at least be secure. Obviously, will be a considerable cost involved with anything of that nature, but in the long run, there's going to be considerable cost coming up, I suspect, when these other parts of the system fail, and we have another £40,000 bill. Yep.
I appreciate what you're saying there, and I can understand that, Councillor Woodliff. I think the monitoring is the important thing here, because the monitoring will identify any surpluses or leakages that we are experiencing. And to invest £1,000 in an automatic system that monitors everything for you sounds common sense to me. But Duncan's going to look into that for us. And I take your point about the pipe they want changing, but that's a big project, and I think that's going to cost a lot of money. But we'll bear that in mind. Okay, thank you. Anybody else want to talk about water leakages? Otherwise, I will run into the toilet in a minute. Right, can we move on? Thank you. So the third report is now another report previously requested by the committee. That's in respect of footway lighting. This is on page 27. Again, I've moved the agenda around a bit. The portfolio holder is Councillor John Baxter, is in attendance to present this report, supported again by the report author, our senior manager, Duncan Hollingsworth. Over to you, Councillor Baxter.
Thank you, Chair, and good evening, fellow councillors and officers. Yeah, it's on page 27. This has been prepared by the team that Duncan runs. So thanks to all the hard work there, something they've been working on for parish councils as well. So in your previous meeting, you resolved to request from officers the cost of the upgrading of a number of its older footway lighting assets across its geography. And this report actually provides the committee with information in relation to a number of those lights. So it's only a brief report. If you turn over to page 28 then, this is to do with converting to LED solutions. So paragraph 2.1 lists all the locations, and then the officers concerned have contacted the contractor to provide a quotation to replace the lights with new 18-watt LED light fittings. And this is in addition, not only the sites that listed, two existing footway lights at the Garfitts Road location, they required end-of-life pole brackets to be replaced. So over on page 29, we talk business and the amount it's going to cost. So the current replacement cost to undertake the above works on these 21 assets is estimated to be £7,350 plus VAT. Obviously, then we have to note then this cost may increase upon any commission as the price was provided on visual inspection rather than a structural inspection. So obviously, if the contractors, the suppliers were going to go around and realise that there was some pole brackets faulty, this could increase the cost. So in the event any order is placed post-quote term, the cost may also be subject to review. Also to mention, paragraph 2.4 on page 29 explains about the footway lights and the park night lights as well. There is a question mark under where moving to park night lighting may prove to be problematic from a reputation management perspective, so it may be prudent to retain the current lighting arrangement of full nighttime illumination in the event of any upgrade. So the officers have done lots of work. Several local authorities have already converted to LED. So you'll see at paragraph 2.6 then, it's an investor save. These assets cost £1,369 per annum to operate, and that's based on an average annual 11.76 night hours and 37.6 pence per kilowatt. So changing the lighting heads would reduce the annual running cost to £610, a potential annual saving then of £758.55, or a reduction of approximately 44.6 in annual running costs. So the capital payback, the investor save then, it would pay back after 9.69 years. So just to mention overleaf page 30 and also under the reasons for recommendations, another positive factor is that LED lights aren't, well, they're much more friendly as regards to carbon footprint as well. So the officers concerned have spent lots of time looking at the costings. They recommend then that BTAC consider the information and determine whether to instruct the replacement of these 21 lights to LED. And also another consideration would be you as officers, well, officers could seek quotes for the replacement of the remaining non-LED lights in its area. So they would be the car parking lighting or the ornate lighting. So to summarise, the recommendation is that the committee consider the information provided and determine whether it wishes to resource the footway lighting upgrades set out and seek further quotes for the remaining lighting assets within the BTAC area. Overleaf page 28, the reasons which we have covered as we've gone along, So that is the case, and thanks to the team for providing this information, Chair. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Baxter. Duncan, you want to add anything to that report?
Only to say that this is possibly the first of 3 possible phases that BTAC may want to look at. The remit for me was to look to undertake the final upgrades to the footway lighting. So lighting, self-explanatory lighting for footways. BTAC also have a number of other lighting assets within their remit, those being some car parking lights and some ornate lights. Those are entirely more complicated matters to get right moving forward, and it would require a lighting contractor to be commissioned to do some works around the most appropriate lights and indeed perhaps locations for those lights. The spread of light from new LED lights is significantly different to those older light fittings. So it may be that BTAC wishes to ask officers to undertake some further works. I would suggest that that's done by way of modelling through the contractor and a sum be allocated to see whether there is a proper invest to save amount and a business case there.
We'll start with the items in the report first, so we get questions for that, and we'll come back to the other bits in a moment. Councillor Gleeson wanted to raise a point.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. I've got some sort of questions, stroke concerns, stroke confusions. In our budget, we are spending £12,700 odd on what's referenced to street lighting. And this obviously is just a 10% subset of that. So do we have other street lights, footlights that are already LED, or is the remaining 11 or 1,000 for the car park lights and the ornamental lights? So that's it, the figures don't seem to sort of balance to me. That then led me on. I've never, in my time on BTAC, had reference to car park and ornamental lights as part of what we're paying for. And so one of my questions is, are these car park lights the lights that are lighting the car parks that the borough is getting income from? Because if they are, I'm not dead sure the council taxpayers paying the BTAC levy should be meeting the costs. And then that leads on to the ornamental lights. What and where are they? Are these on timers? And what are we doing with them? I have no issue really in the end of a spend, but there seems to be an awful lot more money being spent than is attributable to what I always understood we were paying for, which was the street lights, which when the evil county stopped paying for them, we kindly took over the payment for. And so I actually would like to see slightly more detail on all our lights, where we have them, what we're paying for. If they are the car park lights, why are we paying for them? And then look at it more holistically before we move forward. Also, to my mind, that the saving time period, to my mind, is marginal on 10 years. Now, there is the carbon saving, which does, I think, tip the balance just about enough. But I'm unhappy to proceed any further till we actually have a look at what actually we are paying for with lights, because this seems to be just a very small fraction of what we're paying for. Oh, and then one final thing: how long do these LED lights last for? Just as an aside, because obviously if their life is less than 10 years, I accept part of this payment is the conversion of the light so you can plug the LEDs in, but also then we've got to factor that into the balance of saving.
Right, let's just go back to your explanation, well, not your questioning. Let me say that the whole issue of lighting costs are in the in the figures in the next section of this meeting, and I'd like to look at that separately because I've got just as much issues as you've got, and I've already questioned officers around the table about some of those issues. So I'm going to park that bit for the moment, if you don't mind, because I think this is the wrong point for that. We'll do that in a moment. I'd like to go back to the fact that we're talking about these lights for the footway. Let's keep on to that for the moment. And really, any more questions before we decide whether we want to proceed with that or not? Councillor.
I think Councillor Gilbert, did you want? Yeah. It was.
Just an observation, really. It seems that, well, in the last 12-month period, we've dipped into reserves to sort of cover what you might describe as sort of income expenditure. And I'm just concerned that, you know, we'd be taking money out of reserves to deliver this. And would there be some way of ensuring that the money that we save could be put back into our reserves rather than just lost as far as income is concerned?
Okay, noted. Councillor, over to you.
Thank you, Chair. I was just wondering whether the LED lights are actually dangerous for the bats and birds, and also is this a reasonable carbon footprint, minimizing carbon footprint option? Why can't we look at solar, standalone solar lights rather than going for this expensive option? Thank you.
I think first and foremost is bats and birds. There's no significant adverse impact that I'm aware of as an officer at this moment in time. A light is a light. These
Slightly different in terms of the LED lights.
Yeah, I'm not aware as an officer of any difference to the way that it impacts into wildlife. That's a lot, like I say, I go back to a light is a light, and these sometimes are slightly brighter lights, but sometimes have a less spill. So it's nearly like a quid pro quo. There may be less impact, or there may be more impact to fewer things, and each one of those is very difficult to measure. But I'm not aware of any more holistic pieces of work. It's a generalisation now that all street lighting is moving to LED lighting. I'm not aware of any adverse impacts. In respect of your secondary question, street lights, generally speaking, are required for longer periods during the hours or during winter time. There's also significantly more periods of darkness during winter to charge those solar lights up. They're quite simply not efficient enough to run for 15 or 16 hours on 3 or 4 hours of daylight, assuming that that's bright daylight. So unfortunately, solar lights, whilst they may be great for home for a period of time, illuminating your drive when you come home at night, 2 or 4, the darkest of winter nights, they just quite simply don't work.
But has there been any considerations, or is it just what you feel?
No, there are no solar lights available for street lights. It's as simple as that. It's because of their usage, they're unsuitable for illuminating footway lighting.
Okay.
Are there any more questions on the footway lighting? Councillor Gleeson.
To move, Chair, that we take no action at the moment pending a report detailing fully our expenditure on lighting, that we can take a decision with more information we've got. I don't think we can take a decision at the moment with the information we had. I would like to move that this is put back pending a more detailed report. I ask for a seconder.
Okay. Are we all in favour? Oh, or has anybody got any other? Anybody else got any other options to take forward, or do you want to debate what Councillor Gleeson and Councillor Woodliff have proposed and seconded? Anybody? Do we go on, Councillor Doran?
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, Councillor Gleeson's raised some really interesting points this evening, and clearly you'd picked up on them as well. So I think it's fair that we do perhaps defer the report until we've got a more comprehensive account of exactly what this committee is responsible for, what it's paying for, and whether that cost could be passed over to the council budget in general. I would like to know from Duncan the time it might take, bearing in mind he's already expressed his concern about resource and the amount of capacity that this department has. So I'd like to know what a reasonable time is. But yes, I would be happy to support that.
Chair, as I alluded to previously, is we do have, I've inherited from my previous incumbent, Nigel, a list of BTAC lighting attributes. So that runs to some 10 pages, I think some 123 from memory, locations and different types of lights. So that piece of work has already been done. Clearly, I'm relatively new to the party. How that list was populated prior to me receiving it and what work had been done to determine what was BTAC assets and what was not is clearly I'm not privy to, and that may have taken place some significant time ago. If you want to have a look at that, I'm more than happy to share that. That will precipitate a conversation at a later BTAC meeting and probably some further conversations as a council as to who has responsibility for what. It may be a prudent time to make that re-evaluation to make sure that it's accurate, proportionate and fair.
Yes, well, I've learned recently that BTAC are actually paying for the car park lighting, which I didn't know. And I've raised this both with yourself and with Phil Perry. And then that runs into the finances of BTAC and that, which we're going to talk about in a moment. So I think for the time being, I think we'll defer the report and defer the decision pending what we've discussed and find out about the finances of BTAC, because clearly we seem to be paying for things that none of us know what we're paying for. And it's quite confusing and quite worrying as the chairman and the committee that we're not quite sure how we arrived at some of these numbers. So we're going to defer that decision for the time being until we get a clearer picture of BTAC's expenditure and what we're actually paying for. Because I don't think we should be paying for any car parking lighting. We're not getting the car parking fees. Probably paying somebody else's water bill as well, with the sounds of it. So let's move on to the next item then, and that's to deal with the breakdown of the financial statement, which was tabled. Thank you, Duncan, at the previous meeting. This is on page 11 of the agenda, following a request by members for analysis of initial figures provided. I'm going to ask Phil Perry to comment on this, and then I'm going to have my 10 pence worth as well. Okay. Thank you. Good. God bless. Take care. Bye-bye.
Thank you, Chairman. This report provides an update to members on the BTAC financial position for noting, showing the budget and outturn for the 2023-24 financial year and the BTAC reserve at the year end 31st March 2024. This is the final outturn position and is appended to the report pages 17 to 20. The point to note is that, as you will remember from your 8th of February report, in the budget setting report, there are pressures on the BTAC budget over the next financial years. And this year it's currently at £36,455, which means that the funds available to BTAC would be nearer the £82,000, not the £118,000, unless savings and efficiencies can be found within the budget. We've met with finance this morning and asked for a review of recharges to validate them, and just to let you know that we'll come on to the work program a bit, but there is a new finance manager starting, whose name is Jenny Mackins. She's due to start, and we'll be looking forward to meeting you probably at the next meeting with a finance report. And I'll leave it there, because I know you want to raise some.
Right. Thank you very much, Phil. Right, if you look on page 17, everybody, and then the pages follow on. My question is this: how is the budget determined? How are the expenses allocated against the budget? Who determines what costs go where and what recharges are? So we have got a set of numbers here which mean nothing to me. They look very nice in columns, but I don't know how we've arrived at those numbers. And my question, and the finance person, whoever they're supposed to be here tonight, is not here, which has annoyed me because I like officers to be here to answer questions. But what we're going to do now is ask the finance team to come back to us all with explanations on some of these costs that's shown here, how they've arrived at those numbers and where they've come from. Because, you know, I need to understand as a chairman, and you do as a committee, and I should imagine none of you know where these numbers come from and how they've been arrived at. And I think, quite frankly, we cannot operate on that basis, not knowing what we're doing and where we're going. So that's something that I'm asking whether the current finance team or the new finance manager, somebody's got to come back to us in September and give us a breakdown of how these things are arrived at, with some explanations of how they're recharging things, because at the moment they do not make sense to me. I don't know about anybody else. And it's all right saying this is what we did last year, this is what we did this year, but how are those things allocated? How have they been arrived at? How can those expenses be justified? And that's the sort of thing that, at the moment, you know, I'm totally unhappy about. I don't know what anybody else wants to say, but Councillor Gleeson, you obviously want to say something.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. I couldn't agree with you more. And I've got two things just to say. The first is, you know, can the descriptions for some of the variances be slightly more useful than maybe we find on page 19, where we seem to spend nearly twice as much on materials than we budgeted for. And the rather useful comment is materials and consumables higher than expected. Well, that's a bit obvious, isn't it? You know, it might be that, you know, we did something special with that money. Might be nice to know. And then I'm going to bore you all, because I'm old, with a story. When I was previously a councillor on BTAC, there was a park in Allison's ward, and we were being charged well over £20,000 a year for cutting the grass. And so I started and got some sort of coverage in the media, a thing about that we were cutting them with a pair of gold scissors. And all of a sudden in the budget, it dropped down to about 3,000 quid. And so, yeah, I think you're right. I think we do need to know, you know, if this is being apportioned fairly, you know, because, you know, things get tight. And I don't know whether we know yet. I mean, do we know if the new government will be limiting us, as the previous one did, to what we can lift our council tax? But that's an issue. Yeah, just that I think obviously for next year's budget, obviously if we don't have the tie-in to the borough's limit, then that obviously would enable us to maybe help more.
Any other questions from any other councillor? Do all the councillors in this room understand all these numbers and where they've come from? Lovely. That's what I'm aiming to say to everybody. We don't know where these numbers have come from, what they mean, and how they've been arrived at. So I can't accept this budget or whatever it is at this stage. And again, I'm going to say we defer it until we get a breakdown and an understanding of how all these charges and all these costs are arrived at. Some of them are quite straightforward. If we've got one toilet that's broken and we have it repaired, I can understand that. But when you've got a multitude of things where BTAC are paying a portion of some of the costs, I need to understand at what portion we're paying. I certainly don't like the idea of us paying for all the car parking lighting when we don't get any revenue from the, and I'm interested in making sure that these wards in this BTAC group are well looked after, get value for money, and they do get what they're paying for. And at the moment, we're not getting what we're paying for. End of story. Councillor Gleeson, follow that.
Just very quickly, yeah, I mean, I'm more than happy for us to pay for the car park lighting if we get the income. I mean, I have no problems. But what we used to do was we used to workshop our budget just after Christmas. So we would meet, not in a public meeting, where we can ask the questions that, you know, you want to ask, and don't make yourself look too silly. There might be an idea when we're looking at our budget for the coming year that actually we do have a work, sort of a members' workshop on the budget process, so that we can go into that slightly deeper.
I agree. I can't accept numbers that I don't understand, and I've got no explanation how they've arrived at. I just cannot accept that. So therefore, as I say, does anybody like to support my motion that we defer this? And does everybody agree to that? Right, we will defer this, then we won't go into more discussion. We want a proper detailed breakdown of how all this is arrived at for the September meeting as part of the work programme. We have that done if we can, and we get somebody to come back. I'm disappointed that nobody from finance is in. I want that noted, please, in the minutes, because there's somebody should be here, even if it's just to argue against my points or our points. Councillor Woodliff.
Thank you, Chairman. Regarding the Garfitts Lane, I think it was, I did ask a question many years, well, several years ago, when I was on the cabinet, and I was told that, you've got to remember a portion of the cost is actually one officer's money, and a bit more was went to another officer. And Phil Drury, when he got a portion of it, so that's why it was so large. What they were recharging to various different officers, I think that was why. Was it 200,000 or 20,000? I can't remember. It was a huge amount of money, wasn't it?
We need to know the percentage of portions and who the portions of people are, and then we'll all understand when we sit around this table how these numbers are arrived at. And at the moment, we can't and we don't.
Quite right.
Anybody else want to speak? Lovely. So, finally, the work programme on page 33. Got one item scheduled for September. Phil, anything else to add besides the new one?
Of course, we will
Two
have
new ones.
We will have the Q1 finance report, of course, which is and then we've got that other deferred item about the lighting, which we'll revisit at the next meeting once you've had the finance report through. Or do you want to put that on, Chair, for the following meeting?
I'd like them all in the next meeting if we can.
Okay.
Because I think we need to get the finance sorted out and the lighting sorted out, and then one will follow the other.
Okay, we'll put that in.
Councillor Gleeson wants to make another point.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. The gentleman earlier raised the issue of cameras and things, and again, in the depths of my mind, I remember BTAC buying cameras that we could give to people so they could call nuisance in their area. I mean, did they just go the way of the world, or what? And if they did, why? And could we maybe look at what there was an issue in the lane that went from Ingelo through, and so we let them have it, and then we let someone else have it. But this was a recording one, and then obviously our people took it in and looked at things. But I don't know whatever happened to them.
Well, all I'm going to say to this is that I wasn't here then, and I can't speak about it now, and I don't think it's fair for us to give any answers to this question at the moment. We can have a look at it all, yes, and I'll get Phil to make a note of that, because lots of things happen over a period of years in different situations and different committees, and this committee is focused more on value for money, looking after residents and making sure they get what they're paying for. End of story. Any other questions before we close the meeting? Councillor Ambrosty.
I was just wondering whether there are any legal implications if the cameras are installed in private property, Chairman. Thank you.
I'll ask Phil to take that question away and come back with that one, because we can't answer that today because we haven't got the technical people here to answer it. Councillor Austin.
I hadn't intended to say this little bit, but I think, yes, there are. I recall when we were first had some, LCC was dealing with some littering, it could sort of see somebody once they come out of their gate, but not whilst they were inside it. But what I did want to ask was, do we have any idea when the gentleman from the police is likely to come again, or does that depend upon?
We've got that down for next year, councillor
It was
Austin.
agreed to biannual, to come every other year at the last meeting. We raised this at the last meeting, councillor Austin, and it agreed it was going to be an annual attendance. It would be every other year. The police would come.
Because I have one concern within the town itself, so it's not my actual ward, but it's within BTAC. That is the cycling.
Let me just say that we haven't got that on the agenda. We're not talking about, otherwise we're going to be sitting here all night
No,
discussing everything.
To be possibly put
On the work programme.
On the work
Fine,
programme,
carry on.
yes.
We'll put it on the work
It
programme.
concerns cycling in two places in particular. One is over the footbridge, which I think is called St Botolph's Bridge, which clearly says no cycling, but people don't understand the sign. And the other is, again, against the flow of traffic and on the footway through the narrow bit of South Street. And I think those are things I would like to see what we can, as BTAC, clamp down on.
Thank you. I'll put it on the work programme for you. Any other questions before I close the meeting? Thank you very much for coming this evening. Have a safe journey home. And Mr. Wolf, thank you very much. And we'll get back to you with some of the answers. Thank you.